Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, there's outrage in parts of Ethiopia as tens of thousands take to the streets in support of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, demanding more transparency from the government over the circumstances of the kidnapping of dozens of students last month. Also, one of the flagship reforms brought in since Felix Tshisekedi became DR Congo's leader a year ago has been free primary education. The measure has also caused some trouble with overcrowded classrooms. Our correspondents in the country take us closer. And a ban on dreadlocks in Malawian classrooms is reversed after a court ruling upholding Rastafarianism as a religion. But first to our top story. Across northern Ethiopia, tens of thousands of people took to the streets on Tuesday demanding answers from the government over the kidnapping of 27 students over 50 days ago. Some of the captives, most of whom were women, have since been released, but over a dozen are still missing. It's still not clear who took them from a bus leaving Dembi Dolo University. The government's silence on what's going on has sparked a Bring Back Our Girls movement that echoes the campaign that followed the mass abduction of schoolgirls in Chibok, Nigeria in 2014. Well, for a closer look at all of this, we're joined by Aaron Masha, who's in Addis Ababa. Aaron, what do we know about who's missing, who took them, and what's being done to get those students back?
Yes, thanks. So, as you stated, this incident has gripped the country for the last few weeks. But strangely enough, details of the incident have been few and far between. But what we know, what we know so far, is that a bus carrying students was attacked, and students who were being transported elsewhere outside the university were kidnapped by unknown assailants. And what we know is that this took place sometime on December 17. But since then, there hasn't been any details as to who carried out the kidnappings, and at the same time, from the government side as well, there's been silence. Today, under pressure from the public, through social media campaigns and the protests that we've stated, the government did manage to give some details of the incident. It said that it's still its operations to have them released is still ongoing. But again, not much detail beyond that.
I mean, how could that be? We're talking about dozens of students who were abducted. Also, on top of that, this hasn't attracted anywhere near the same international attention as, for example, the Nigerian Chibok kidnappings did back in 2014. Why would the government be so cagey about what happened?
I think part of the reason why it hasn't garnered as much attention as the Chibok girls in Nigeria is because of the government's silence. That's one. And two, the area from where they've been kidnapped itself is a conflict area at the moment. The government is waging an operation against an offshoot of a rebel group, which has been waging a conflict for the last 2-3 years. The area itself is you could say it's cordoned off. The internet has been shut down. The phone lines aren't working. But at the same time, there are accusations. Some have pointed their fingers at this rebel group. This rebel group, in return, has denied any involvement. It says, in fact, that these accusations are part of a smear campaign by the government. But apart from that, no details are emerging, and the government itself sees any incident in this part of the country as sensitive, and it seems that it's quite bent on keeping a tight lid on it. So far, very little information is coming out.
So who is this rebel group? I mean, to be clear, it's still not certain who was behind the kidnapping. But do tell us more about any of the credible suspects currently being examined by those looking closely at the case.
You know, it's very, very difficult to even come close to actually guessing who might have carried out the kidnapping. The government itself hasn't named a suspect. At the same time, some observers, some analysts have pointed their fingers at this rebel group. This rebel group is an offshoot of the Oromo Liberation Front, which previously was outlawed by the government up until 2 years ago when Prime Minister Abiy came to power and allowed all these rebel groups that have previously been banned to participate in politics. But instead, what happened afterwards, subsequently, is that a faction of this rebel group emerged and has been active in this particular part of Western Oromia called Wallega. But at the same time, even though some have accused this offshoot of this rebel group of involvement, this offshoot denies any involvement whatsoever. It says that it's part of a campaign by the government to discredit them and for the government to enhance or increase its operations against this rebel group. So this is what we know so far, and it's pretty scarce. Thanks
very much. Aaron Masher there for us in Addis Ababa. In other news, Burkina Faso said that 39 people were killed in a militant attack over the weekend. It's still not clear who was behind the raid on the village of Silgadji. Extremist groups have been ramping up attacks, and the country struggling with the world's fastest growing number of displaced people. And an emergency operations centre has been set up across Africa as a precaution against the potential spread of a coronavirus that has emerged in central China. It will boost airport screenings and lab support. There have, though, been no confirmed cases of the infection in Africa so far. 4 Ethiopians with suspected cases have been quarantined in Addis Ababa as tests are carried out. A student in Kenya has also been put into isolation after travelling from Wuhan, the city at the heart of the Chinese outbreak. Now, one of the flagship reforms brought in since Felix Tshisekedi became DR Congo's president a year ago has been free primary education. But the measure is still struggling with teething troubles, as our correspondents report.
The head teacher of this school in Kinshasa doesn't know where to turn. Classrooms are overcrowded. There are 85 children in this class alone, and there's barely enough room for everyone.
See how the children have to stand. We don't have enough benches or classrooms. Last year we had 275 pupils in the entire school. This year we have almost 2,000.
Now that primary school is free in the DRC, children of all backgrounds have access to education. That's led to an extra 4 million pupils across the country.
They make us study. They teach us how to read and how to write.
When school wasn't free, I didn't have enough friends. But now I have a lot more friends than before.
More friends, but not more funds. Teachers are finding it increasingly difficult to do their jobs.
This is what we use for maths. And this one is for French, but I can't use it anymore. It's old and falling to pieces.
Salaries are another worry. Before, teachers were paid by parents. Now the state is responsible for paying staff. But many have yet to receive any money. Joseph Kabange says he can't even afford bus fare anymore.
We haven't been paid so far. We're still waiting for our salary, which is why we have to walk home. We can't take public transport. We don't have a choice.
The government says that 97,000 teachers will receive outstanding pay by the end of January.
We'll find a solution, because our country is full of riches. We're working on new ways to raise money and to ensure that this reform continues to be implemented.
The World Bank has granted DRC a $1 billion loan over 3 years in a bid to help build urgently needed new schools.
Rastafarians in Malawi have welcomed a High Court ruling that's upheld their rights to worship freely. In part, that means the children from Rastafari families must be allowed to go to school with dreadlocks. Previously, they'd been banned from government classes. Take a look.
For the past 2 years, Ishmael Nansolo was banned from going to school. because of his dreadlocks. After a long legal battle, the 19-year-old is now finally able to resume his education thanks to a court ruling allowing all children of Rastafari religion to enroll in government schools in Malawi.
If the court hadn't granted this injunction, I think my life would be over. I believe education is the only answer to a brighter future. I'm thankful to my father who struggled and fought for my right to go to school.
Ishmael's father, Ali, lobbied for over a decade for the Malawi government to uphold Rastafarianism as a religion. He considers the ruling as a victory for his community and hopes it will help it be more accepted in Malawi, a country where Rastafarians have often faced discrimination and persecution.
If our children goes to school and gets educated, then we have answers to some of our problems. Everybody got a light to follow his conscience, religion, belief. We have that light.
The Rastafari movement, which was born in the Caribbean, preaches a return of the black diaspora to the promised land of Africa. But those who did return to the continent have been widely oppressed, including in Malawi, where Rastafarianism was effectively banned until the 1990s. Now perceptions have slowly begun to change. The ruling allowing Rasta children to go to school in Malawi follows similar judgments in Zimbabwe, Kenya, and South Africa.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again. Take care.
France 24, a different point of view.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.